And welcome to episode number 12 of the QCast. I am Bob Quillman. And boy, what a special guest I have for you today. It is the Masked Marauder, our friend, that D3 guy, who, as you know, that follow him on Twitter, he likes to be anonymous. We're going to have to get into why that is with him. But that D3 guy, boy, I've been waiting for this podcast for a long time. It's great to have you on the QCast.
Appreciate you having me on, Bob. It's been a while since we've talked, so I was happy to reconnect a little bit. And yeah, I'm happy to dive in on somebody else's podcast and not my own.
And we'll talk about that here in just a second. Your podcast is awesome, and boy, you were cranking out some awesome content. I want to talk about some of that. Let's just first talk about this at D3 guy, or at is it that D3 guy persona, and why you choose to be anonymous. Let's just talk through that whole piece of it first, and the fact that you're not actually wearing a mask because of the coronavirus. It's because you're trying to hide your identity. So talk through that, please, for us.
Yeah. It was something that sparked about 2 years ago. Actually, you know what? No, I have to go back a little further than that. I would say about 5 years ago, I worked for a guy who was all about making sure that there's equal coverage to everyone in the country. And I started to think the best way to do that is to add more outlets to Division 3. The guys at Division 3 Hoops, D3Hoops.com, they're the OG. They're the ESPN. They're like they are who covers Division 3 basketball. But for Division 3 basketball to get to the next level, there need to be more people like them. I'm not saying it has to be me. I just think there needs to be multiple people covering them. And then that was in the back of my mind for years. And about 2.5 years ago, or about 2 years ago, I would say, I was sitting at my desk and I was on Twitter and somebody tweeted something. I said, dang, I wish I could say something about that, but I can't say something about that because I currently work in a school and I don't really want people to know that I'm going to say that, but I do still want to say it. So I said, I'm going to create
you set up
an alter ego. And that's what I did. And I can't believe where it got to. I just did it for fun. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, let's follow this guy. And then I look around and I've got 1,000 followers and now close to 2,000 or whatever it may be. And it's like, whoa. And it's pretty cool because it shows that there's people out there that also love and care about our division.
It's a good point you make about the D3Hoops.com. Nice way to put it. The OGs, the ESPN, the mothership. So that crew of Gordon Mann and Pat Coleman and Dave McHugh and Ryan Allen Scott. And I'm not sure who all the players are, but those are the ones that I know for sure. They've been doing it a long time. They really transformed Division 3 media coverage. But then, like you said, it's good to have some side outlets. I think you and I are on the same page here. I started this QCast craziness just because I can go off down a little more specific road if I want. And you're doing cool stuff with your Twitter handle and your podcast. And there's several others. My good friend Ryan, how do I pronounce Ryan? Whitnable? Is that how we pronounce his last name?
Yeah, Whitnable, right? I think that's how it is.
He's awesome. He provides tremendous coverage. He set up the Great Lakes Invitational. In fact, I need to have him on this. So I love that the community is bigger than it once was. And so you've got different people chiming in as we get time and providing content, having some stuff out there. And I think that's what I hear you saying is just another voice.
You need content. I mean, in today's day and age, especially with social media, the best way to get your name out there is to provide content. So we as a group, all we want to do is tell the world about Division 3 basketball. How do we do that? There needs to be a lot of us. And you're right. There's a lot of guys. Whit Nable comes to mind. You do a great job. I'm okay, but then you have these other guys who aren't official, but they just all they do is tweet about Division 3 hoops, and there's hundreds of them out there.
Right.
And that's what has been really cool to see. I'm pretty sure after I went into existence, I saw a Twitter handle come up that was that Texas D3 guy.
I
That is
think
not me,
that's right there. I think you influenced that person's
and I was
great.
like,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Like most people are like, oh, you're stealing my brand. I don't care. We're all doing the same thing here.
Right. And would you agree that, or let me say it this way, is the reason that I do what I do on Twitter, someone asked me that recently, is, well, why do you tweet all this stuff about Division 3? And I had to think about it for a second. And I think at the end of the day, for me, I want to be part of building the D3 brand. There's a
Yeah.
lot of confusion around Division 3, and I want to do my part to make sure that high school kids, alums, just random basketball people, AAU people, maybe whoever, that they understand that Division 3 is a big community with a lot of people who care, and that it's a good thing for kids to want to go Division 3. Like, to me, it's about being part of the building of the brand. The other part would be just having fun with it. What's your take on that? Like, what's your spin on why you're doing what you're doing, in addition to what you've already said? Get a little deeper on that. There's the logo, by the way. There is the
I
logo.
love Division 3 basketball. It's as simple as that. That's why I do it. I love it more than anything else in this world. And I just want to share that with people. And I think it goes along with building the brand. But I think if we all spread the love that we have for it, and then we show people why we love it so much, and the storylines of it, and how good people have to be, like, do people like, and I get on this topic all the time as a coach, high school kids don't understand how good these guys are. They don't get how good these guys in Division 3 are. They just don't get it. And I want to spread that. I want to show people more of that because I love it.
How did that start, by the way? What was we've all got our own Division 3 story and why we're here today. What's your Division 3 story? Why do you love Division 3?
I did not know that Division 3 existed until I was probably 21 years old. I didn't know that they existed. And then I got to school, and at a Division 3 school, and I grew up a fan of the big Division 1 team in my state. So in my mind, that's all I know. And I show up at a Division 3 school, and I get to the gym. I said, it's a pretty nice gym. And I said, they must have a team. And I look up on the wall, I see some banners. I said, oh, so they must be okay. So I walk into the head coach's office, which at the time I thought was the craziest thing in the world, that some nobody, could walk into the office of a college basketball coach.
Right.
And I'm like, where am I? And he said, hey, how you doing? And he sat me down and we talked. And the journey it started there. I worked for him for 4 years. I've been now in Division 3 for 9 years. And that love started because the first boss I had is one of those guys that is just truly a Division 3 guy at heart. He's a guy that has worked with and for and against some of the best coaches that Division 3 has ever seen. I mean, like, I'm talking like the Mike Neers and the Bob Walshes of the world. I mean, I'm like, this guy I worked for him, and I had the privilege of doing that. And then it grew from there. And that's where I am now, where you could not pay me all the money in the world to ever leave Division 3.
I think most of us that are doing what we're doing, like you and I, we're probably in that same camp, that this is the level that we choose to follow. Now, don't get me wrong, when March Madness comes on, I mean, I'm knee deep in those Division 1 games every year.
Who doesn't love it?
Yeah, it's great. It's apples and oranges, though. Division 3, Division 1, very different. Doesn't mean we don't like to follow other levels. In fact, I follow some NAI in particular, some schools around the Chicago area that I have an interest in. But it is a commonality in how we look at this. And I think for me, it starts with the quality of the kids. That's probably the first thing that got me into this, is as a peer of those guys going to school, and then being a young alum and getting to be a little older alum. The caliber of the student athlete that's truly there for the love of the game, and truly a student first and an athlete second. The access to the student athletes, like you said, walking into the head coach's office. You
Couldn't
can't
believe
do
it.
that with Coach K, right? He can't get
Right.
anywhere
And then
near.
the next day I'm on the court and I'm playing pickup with the guys in the team. And I'm like, I would never have been able to do that at a Duke, at a North Carolina. I mean, you don't just walk into the gym, talk to Coach K, and then, play pickup with those guys. But I did. And
Right.
I was like, oh my gosh, like you're just like me.
Talk a little bit about the talent level, because I'm in the same boat as you. Is a lot of the time I spend is making sure that people understand that this is in no way, shape, or form some form of intramural basketball. We're talking here about, every great Division III team has at least one kid that could play Division I somewhere, certainly Division II, but
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of D1 teams that these guys could play for.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
talk about the talent level in Division III and what
I
you've
always look back to when I was a student and I would play pickup with the guys on the team. And as a high schooler, obviously, I'm thinking I'm going D1, just like every college, every high school basketball player. And then I don't. And then I get there to, Division III, and I play these guys. And I'm thinking, okay, like, those first couple weeks on school, I could play with these guys. I could not play with those guys. I mean, they were like, they were far and away 1,000 times better than I was. And I just couldn't believe it. And over the last 9 years, I've had the privilege of working with and coaching multiple All-Americans, coaching against multiple All-Americans, watching. And it's like the talent level of these guys, if they were to walk into a gym with 9 Division I guys, you would not be able to tell who was D1 and D3. You just can't. I don't care what anybody says. You cannot. You can't. And that, I think, is something that most kids don't believe until they see it. I think a lot of high schoolers are very misinformed because they're just constantly being told one thing, but they're never truly shown how good Division III is. I'm very lucky that the first 4 years of my Division III basketball life were in New England. Everyone knows New England is like almost like basically the mecca of Division III basketball. I think that's a fact. And when you take kids in that region and you show them a Division III game because they're readily available, go in Boston. There's like 40 Division III schools and in 30 minutes of Boston. So you can bring your high school team to a game and then they see it more. But the problem is you can't do that across the whole country. And I think that the more that we can show these kids via Twitter, websites, Instagram, whatever it may be, the more we can show them, the more they will understand how freaking good these guys are. Ryan Terrell is one of the best Division III players I have ever seen. I mean, he is unbelievable how good that guy is. And he hasn't even scratched the surface. I mean, another one that comes to mind, I mean, Flannery at Babson, I saw him play in the Final Four in person, and I was just floored by this guy. Ty Nichols from Keene State was another guy I was just floored by. Like, there's just certain guys that you watch and you go, that's a Division I player.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch
for whatever reason,
right.
they're at Division III.
Whole bunch of Division I players playing Division III. And we're going to get into this season. I want to talk more about Terrell as we go, because I watched almost every Yeshiva game this year. Saw him last year quite a bit. I want to talk about him and their team. I want to get more into your Twitter handle, which everyone should follow at that D3 guy. See, there's the logo. That's what you're looking for on the little avatar. It's really fun. And we mentioned, or we talked about earlier before we started, you were cranking for a while, and then all of a sudden you kind of got quiet. I had to look for you on the cover of some milk cartons, my friend. So, but now I understand as much as that as you want to go into here publicly, but why did you kind of get quiet for a little bit? And it sounds like now you want to maybe crank it back up a little bit. Talk through that.
Yeah. So, obviously COVID has been interesting. And I think I started cranking out some of my better content in the true, I guess you call it episode 1 and episode 2 of COVID. But then, I'm getting married this summer. And I want to do everything I can to make sure that I save for that. I got to save for honeymoon, I got to save for wedding, all that. I mean, you know how it goes. So I've been working, from sun up till sundown every day, 7 days a week, trying to do that. And that has taken away from my extracurricular activity. However, that has not stopped. Obviously, I still watch, I still pay attention. I know who's doing what. Obviously I'm still involved with my team, meaning that I'm still involved with my league. I still know what's going on there in my region. So I haven't disappeared completely. I'm still paying attention, but in terms of the publicity of things, I did tone it back. But yes, I would like to start, especially after the wedding is over. I would like to crank it right back up again.
And your podcasts are awesome. So everyone can go on to the Twitter feed, go to the homepage of @thatD3guy and look at the podcast series. I don't know how many you got to, 13, 14, 15, somewhere
Something
in
like
there.
that. Yeah.
I was lucky to join you a couple times. The second time we talked about some of the greatest teams in history, greatest players we've seen, that kind of thing. And you had some really cool guests on there. We even had a little overlap. I just noticed that you had Damian Jablonski.
I did.
I had him, and we certainly had a little overlap with those. But the podcast, that's something that you're looking to get back into.
Yes,
when you have time.
I would like to. I think that to start doing it every week is a little over ambitious, maybe overzealous of me. I think that doing it every other week may be more realistic, especially to start. But in a perfect world, I'd like to get to the point where I am coming out with a new episode every week, because there's more than enough people to interview.
Yeah, that's the great thing about Division III is, what do we have, 400 teams? I mean, you and I could be podcasting people for the next 10 years and never do the same person twice, probably.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, D3 Nation certainly hopes that when you get time and you're in a good place to do that you get back, because that is really outstanding stuff. I think I had a chance to listen to all but maybe 2 of those, and I'm gonna finish those other 2. I also want to tease this, and then we're going to get to it towards the end. You're actually working on a book.
I am.
Based on Division III.
I am.
So hold that thought. I want everyone to stay tuned on that, but just tease that a little bit. That book you're working on. Let's not get into tons of detail, but how much time you spend and have you spent working on this book?
I've probably put in about 100 man hours on it. Just more research. I'm in the research stage, talking to certain people, getting stories from them. To keep it simple, I want it to be almost an expose on the reality of Division III basketball.
Let's leave that there, and then I want to get way deeper into it, kind of more right before we close this thing. So stay tuned for that, folks. Regions, we kind of tease each other a lot about this stuff, as I'm a central region guy, and I'm tied to the CCIW and the WIAC, and I'm a central region power conference guy. The great thing about different voices is that you get to know different regions. Like Ryan covers the Great Lakes, and there's things about the Great Lakes that I never would have got a chance to dig into, because I didn't know about Marietta that well. I didn't know about Mount Union. I didn't know about Ohio Wesleyan in tons of detail. So he's shining a spotlight there. You've got national coverage, certainly, but you do a good job too of kind of some of the things close to home. And so I think region wise, would you agree that it's good to have different people in different parts of the country doing this thing?
I think it is. It's hard for one person or even 2 or 3 people to cover the entire country. And if you had one person, like you said, if you had a you in one place, a me in another place, you have a Whitnable in one place, you've got who's the guy in New England? He does a really great job. Noontime Sports.
Yeah,
does a great job of Division III sports, not just basketball. But if you have someone like that in every region who is going to stick to that region and cover that region, that helps us tremendously. I try to cover everyone. I admit that the two regions that I probably favor more than any are East and South, because I have more familiarity with them, even after spending 4 years in New England.
Sure.
But New England gets enough coverage as it is. So, I'll cover them when I want to, but East and the South are the two that I think I like to cover the most.
What's your take on just strength of regions, differences in regions? You've been to Final Fours. You've certainly, with your team, seen different regions and different teams come in. How do you assess the lay of the land across Division
I
3?
may be a little controversial. I don't think that any one region is the best. I don't think that any one region is better than any other region, because I think, and I truly believe, and I say this from my coaching part of my heart, anyone can beat anyone on any given night.
Agree.
And any coach listening to this will agree with that.
Agree. That's 100%
And,
true.
And I think that because of that, yes, you can say that SOS definitely plays a role in things. I mean, everybody likes to talk about it. Yeshiva 2 years ago, right? That was the big story. But I think also you go down and you look at the South and you look at the West. The issues they have is they have to deal with the geographical limitations that, do not allow them to play certain teams. That's why they want to pay people to come play them. But I don't think that anyone is really just better than the next, because you see it all the time. New England team goes down to Florida for a trip, and during when it's the winter months, they get greeted by a team from the South or the West. Does the New England team win every single time? No, they don't. But the way that, unfortunately, that I think the Twitterverse looks at things says, oh, no, they're automatically going to win. They're a NESCAC team. They're a NUMAC team. They're an LEC team. They do this, they do that. Well, they're not always going to win. They're just not. And I think that there's talented teams in every little corner of the country.
And I think it's changed a lot too in the last decade plus, maybe 15 years, we could say, in that you truly do have so much more parity than you used to have. Mm-hmm. You have more programs are trying to be good at men's basketball than certainly 20, 30 years ago. And that's created the parity. I think you've got these great, hungry coaches that get jobs at random places where you're like, why would that person take that job? And all of a sudden that team's in the NCAA tournament 3 years later. And so I completely agree that anyone can beat anyone. I think, for me, I still think some regions are deeper than others.
Deeper is a good word. Yes. Deeper is the appropriate word.
And I think that would be the only separator for me of the Central region, is you've got two of the top 5 conferences in the same region. You get all the Wisconsin League schools, the WIAC, you got the CCIW. And oh, by the way, you add WashU, you add St. Norbert, you add, your University of Chicago. But I do agree with you that's changed. When look at Yeshiva, is that not the best case? This team comes out of nowhere and they could be the preseason #1 next year. That's probably the best example of what you're talking about.
Yeah. I remember listening to Steinmetz when he got the job at YU. And I remember he did an interview with McHugh on Hoopsville. And he said, our goal here is to win a national title. And he's made that almost a reality. And the fact that he's gotten that close should absolutely, people should not be surprised, because that's just how it works. When you get a coach who knows what they're doing and can get the right kids, it doesn't matter what school you're at. If you put the right pieces together, anyone can beat anyone.
What's amazing to me as well, and you would know this side of it way better than me because you're on the coaching side of it, there's guys that take jobs at places without the facilities. It's all they have to sell is them. When they take these jobs, they're hungry, they're ready to get after it. They maybe have a crappy facility and not much, physically to sell kids to in terms of the gym. Now I'm sure the school's great, but you've seen that too, where people just say, I can turn that into a winner. I believe in myself. I'm going to bet on myself. And to just talk about that side of it and what you've seen on that front.
the first thing that comes to my head is a good friend of mine, Coach Dean Burrows at Wesley College. Everybody knows, right? Obviously, Wesley College, they're closing, but when he took the job there, I don't know if you've ever been to their gym, and I'm not. It's not me speaking down to them. Coach and I joke about it all the time. Their gym is not great. It's in a bad neighborhood. He's told me they've got leaks in the ceiling. I mean, it's not a good situation. But what did he do last year? He made the NCAA tournament. They won their league because he brought in the right kids. He believed in what he was doing. They believed in what he was doing, and they put it together, and he created a beast over there.
Right.
And I think that happens. There's so many of those stories every year. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't, all the rims are 10 feet. They're all 10 feet. All the courts are the same. It doesn't matter. If you can play, you can play. If you got a bad facility, a good facility, don't get me wrong. A good facility helps in recruiting. It does. But at the end of the day, if a kid loves a coach, it doesn't matter what that facility looks like. If they have a relationship with that coach, it's not going to matter.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very, very well said. And that's one of the fascinating things I think there is around the country right now, is so many programs are trying to be good in men's basketball. And that's why we're seeing the parity this season. Wow. What do we say about this past season? You know, a year ago, a year and a few months ago, when the pandemic hit, I think you and I created the, what do we call it? The busted bubble? What did we
something
call it?
Like, yeah, the bursted bubble,
The
invitational,
bursted bubble.
something like that.
Yeah, we were like so bored. We created an NIT for Division III. We actually created, was it a 64 team field or 48? It was
I think it was a 32 team. I think it was 32 teams.
But we had cool matchups and everything. I think right after we made that, the pandemic hit. Talk about, from your standpoint, being on the inside of a coaching staff, when that pandemic hit mid-March 2020, like what happened? What were the steps? What played out on your end?
I mean, it was really tough. You know, our season ended, and then, you know, we're watching the NCAA tournament. That ends, school ends, kids get sent home, and at first you're in that initial shock. You're in that, dang, I don't get to see my guys, you know, for a couple weeks, because you're thinking in your head it's going to be a couple weeks. You don't know, and I'm thinking, okay, I'll see my guys soon. I'll see them soon. I went like 6-7 months without seeing any of my players, and like, you know, I hope they missed me as much as I missed them, but I missed them, and it was really tough on them. And then to come in, our league was one of the first leagues to cancel the season, and it was unfortunate, you know, and just to see how disappointed the guys were, not only to have their season canceled, but then to watch some other teams play was tough, especially in our region. And I think that affected them. But I will say our guys, and especially the guys I think in our league, have responded really well and are just rearing and ready to go for next year. And the schools in this area, especially our school, they've done a incredible job to get us to where we can be ready for next year. But it has been difficult.
What's recruiting been like during the pandemic? I've asked a few coaches that. I've got some context from Illinois Wesleyan head coach Ron Rose, but what's it been like for you and your staff with this crazy time period?
You know, it's been interesting. You're recruiting virtually. You can't go see the kids if the kids are even playing. You know, there's some kids I recruited this year that didn't even have a season.
Do you wear your mask and your taped over hat when you recruit?
I do not.
Okay, that's good. I was going to say that might be a best practice.
I do not.
I'm glad.
It's funny, actually, of my current players, I think only one of them knows of my alter ego. You know, I don't know how he figured it out, but he figured it out. I don't know how he did it, but he came up to me once in the locker room and he's like, "Hey," and I'm like, hey, "How'd you know that?" And, you know, so I tried to deny it, but I couldn't help. I started laughing. And he said, "You know, I know you're kidding with me." So, you know, no, I don't. But again, it's odd because you're trying to create a relationship with a kid and a family virtually, which is much more difficult to do. You know, I'm the kind of guy, like, when I go to a game, I want to say hi to mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, sister, every single person in the family. I'm giving them hugs. Well, you can't do that anymore. Not only can I not go to games, but it's going to be so, you're not going to be allowed to hug people. You know,
Right.
you're not going to be allowed to dap them up. And I mean, it's a little, it's going to be different, but I think that we found ways to be creative in recruiting. I think you have to. I think all coaches have in their own way. Um, and I think the kids have appreciated it. And they see the effort we're putting in is no different than the effort we would have done anyway. We're still talking to them almost on a daily basis. And we're still doing little things. We're still sending the mail, whatever it may be. And I think that the kids appreciate that.
So going back to a little bit what you said when the pandemic hit and not being able to see your players and them not being able to see you, the whole mental health aspect of what we've been living through as a society, the whole world, the last 14 months or so. I want to get your take on that. You know, for me, yes, there's been a mental health aspect to the pandemic, but I mean, day to day, all this has changed is where I go to do my job. I sit right here at my little home office and I'm on Zoom and Teams instead of driving to Austin, Texas, right? That's it for me. But boy, I can't imagine being a college kid and not being able to do what you do and see your buddies and play basketball. And what's it been like for the student athletes during this whole thing?
I think it's been very tough. I think that, coaches like to put tweets out, so proud of these guys. They're so mentally tough, this and that and this and that. But like at the end of the day, it is very, very difficult. And if there's a coach out there that says it wasn't difficult for their guys, they're lying. It was difficult. And I have made a point, and I know a lot of other coaches that I've spoken to that I'm friends with have said the same thing. They make a point to start every single conversation with a kid. How are you doing? What are you like? How are you doing? I don't care what you did today. I don't care. Like, how are you doing?
Right.
And I think it's so important. Coaches, administrators, athletic trainers, everyone, that's how you need to start these conversations, not only with student athletes, but with other coaches, with other administrators. And I think I think our guys have started now doing that with each other. And I think that's the biggest step that we've taken as a team.
And where do you see this? Where are we now in the pandemic? So we've got, we're getting vaccinated. There's progress, but it's still a thing. Obviously, where do you see this thing at right now in terms of Division III basketball in your program and your guys?
Well, I think it's interesting now that they're talking about what is it? I think if you're outside and you're vaccinated, you don't have to have your mask. I know there's all different opinions on these things.
Yep.
At the end of the day, it's just about being smart. If you're with 50 other people and you're all not wearing masks and you don't really know a lot of those people, you're probably not too smart. But if you know those people, if you know they're vaccinated, or if you know they're not positive, or they're getting tested regularly, okay. I think we're at the point, crazy to say, I think a lot of people have either had it or they've been vaccinated.
Yeah.
Or they're the type of people that stay indoors so much where there's no shot in heck that they're ever going to get.
Right.
So I think that going forward with the amount of vaccinations that have been rolling out, and with the knowledge that we as a country and a world have about this, I think that there's a very, very good chance that next year, Division III and all other sports, and we'll see a substantial increase in games played, classes attended, dorm rooms filled, things of that nature. And I know it's so crucial, especially for Division III. How many Division III schools are tuition driven? They need to get kids on campus.
Yeah, whole bunch rely on athletics.
Yeah, and the fear was at the beginning of the pandemic, in the fall was, how are we going to get these kids to come? Are we going to be able to stay alive? Is this school? And when you have 83% of all Division III schools as private schools, it can get scary. But I think Division III as a whole handled it really well. You had a number of teams that played a lot of games. You had a number of teams who didn't. But going into next year, I think the groundwork is there for us as a division to have a successful year.
Agree. I think the word normal would be too much to say, but I think we can get close to it. I really do. If enough people get vaccinated, there's a lot of time is on our side at this point here heading into about May 1st. and thinking through where we need to be, mid-August. I think things look pretty good to me at this point for next year to feel pretty good. Let's talk about this basketball season that just happened, this very strange truncated season where over 200 teams, well over 200 teams did play. And there were incredibly meaningful games, great games. It got me through the January, February. I mean, thank goodness after all that missed time to be able to watch
Right.
for me CCIW games and then watch a Calvin game and then watch
Right.
all of these Texas teams that were playing and the Ohio teams. Final top 10, I'll just read through it here, was Randolph-Macon, St. Thomas, Yeshiva, Illinois Wesleyan, Marietta, Trine, Dubuque, Wheaton, Platteville, DePaul. I might as well just list the other 5: Barry, Oshkosh, La Crosse, Whitworth, and New Jersey City. So just to remind you of kind of the landscape that was at the top at the end. I know you were watching, you were paying attention. What were some of your takeaways from this season?
Well, first and foremost, I think the takeaway was that the teams that were playing, it's incredibly impressive, the discipline that they had, to stay masked, to be smart about where they were going, to not test positive. And I know there were positive tests here and there, but as a
Sure.
whole, for them to get in those amount of games, great. The other side, as a spectator and as a coach, I want more games. Yeshiva played 7 games. I would have loved to watch them play 14, and we were lucky. Trine was a team that was unbelievably good all year. I mean, like that team is so scary good. And the fact that they got to play 18 games, I mean, it was like a gift. That was like, that was a gift. And it was fun. The teams that were playing, you could tell every team played every game that I watched, every team played like it could be their last. And I think that was the most important part of it. And every team that played this year, whether if you played 1 game or if you played 18, I know those games were meaningful. Might not have been meaningful in the grand scheme of things, but it was meaningful to that team. It was meaningful to that coach, that administration, that school. I think that's one of the big takeaways for me, was that it just, a lot of kids out there realized this can be taken away from you at any moment.
Any certain teams jump out? I read the final top 15. It doesn't mean that those were, the perfect top 15. Certainly there's teams that could have been as high as number 5 that didn't get in, so it's a team that didn't play enough games, or maybe a team that lost a couple. Who stood out to you in terms of the games you watched this year?
Obviously Yeshiva. It's hard not to say Yeshiva, only because they've just taken the spotlight, it seems, from everyone. Just the way they've done it. They're so fun to watch. They're so fundamentally sound. They just do everything right. If one guy's not on, you got 4 other guys you got to deal with, and it's like, good luck. Randolph-Macon is the powerhouse. I think that I think people don't understand how truly good they are, and with a full season last year and a full season this year, I think that Randolph-Macon would have just obliterated people. And another team I really like is Barry. I've been so their head coach, Mitch Cole, when he took over at Barry, I said, you watch out, because this team's going to be, because he's a phenomenal coach. You watch out what this guy's going to do there. And here they are. A full season this year. I think they win their league again. Like even so, they win their league. They win multiple NCAA tournament games. I think, that's a team I really like to watch. TCNJ was another team I really like to watch. I was hardcore TCNJ last year. Called them winning that first round game. Coming into this year, I knew they were going to be just as good. I mean, it's hard to pick.
And there were some nice stories though too this year with Trine, for example. Trine they didn't have a ton of expectations nationally. I think a lot of us just didn't know what they had going on there. Then you start watching them play. I think early did they beat, maybe it was Calvin or something. I'm like, wow, they're really good. Trine was a great story. Barry was a great story. New Jersey City was a great story.
Yeah.
Up and down the list, but I think those are the ones that stand out to me. Whitworth was a great story in
Yep.
different ways. They had a brutal schedule where they lost some games to upper level teams, and then they come on, it just played great. Pacific Lutheran in the Whitworth Conference, they were a great story this year. They were ranked for a few weeks, dropped out
Yeah.
towards the end. I was so glad that there was basketball to watch. I mean, just look, selfishly, it was great to see games. It was great.
Yeah.
And kudos to the student athletes for being able to get on the bus, because they had to test negative in order just to get on that darn
Yep.
bus.
Yep. It,
Um,
it was tough because I know you see NAIA and D2 and D1, those guys are playing full seasons. And you wonder to yourself, what's the difference? Why aren't we playing a full season?
well, what was your thought about that? I mean, I had Mike Schauer on here, the head coach of, or the head of the National Men's Basketball Committee, who talked about why the tournament was canceled. And, I think he explains it extremely clearly on why that happened. A lot of people, I think, like to not have the facts and take pot shots, and they don't quite know what the NCAA is. And, oh, the NCAA canceled Division III because there's no money. Well, there's actually a lot of layers to that. What was your take? Was it the right move to not have the tournament? Did you think that was a bad call? What's your
I
thought?
thought it was a little premature. I thought maybe they could have waited another few weeks or even a month to make that decision. I think that there could have been a way to maybe have done some sort of bubble tournament with 16 teams. I think that, but you just don't know. And I agree. I mean, it's hard financially, but at the end of the day, if a team wants to play and another team wants to play, they're going to make it happen. I mean, look at Trine and Randolph Macon,
Yeah, that was cool. That was
that
cool.
last
They did
game.
that. Yeah.
They made it happen. Who's to say that if you took the top 8 teams and said, all right, guys, make it happen over one weekend, you take 8 teams, national champion, got to win 3 games in a row, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Who's to say they couldn't have done that?
I agree.
And I think that I think also it was a learning process. I think that it gives us the groundwork going into next year to make sure 100% that we have a tournament.
Yeah, I agree with you that I wish they would have waited just a little bit. I think it was so influenced by how bad the pandemic was at the
Yes.
time they were making the decision. If you put yourself back into January, in December, things were not good in terms of number of cases and deaths and all of this, like the hospital capacity. I think that had they gotten to the end there in March at that point and seen the lay of the land and who are the best teams, and I think you could have put together a pretty nice tournament and logistically found a way to do it.
Yes.
Like Coach Morehouse, the Hope women's coach, told me, sure, a lot of people didn't put in to host when they didn't know if they'd be even playing or in the field at that point. If you got down and there were like 16 teams that were going to be in a tournament, I would bet you all 16 find a way to host those games.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, they would.
it's a lot easier to have the conversation when you know that you're in the field. So I'm with you. I just wish that it would have been put off a little. I don't know where that 60% number came from.
Yeah.
Frustrates me a little bit that there were well over 200 teams that did play,
Yep.
and a whole bunch of the top leagues and teams were out there playing, and
Yeah.
so I just feel like there would have been a great tournament this year. I know the NESCAC wouldn't have been in it, and the UAA wouldn't. So many of the great leagues and programs would not, but a lot of them were.
And
So
it
that's
could
a
have
little bit
been a good
frustrating.
showcase for teams and leagues that otherwise may have not gotten that type of publicity.
Absolutely. We're on the same page on that. And I respect the heck out of the people that were part of the decision. And I encourage people to get to know the facts before they take pot shots. On social media nowadays, it's super easy to just tweet something, but dig in, at least be informed. And then if you still disagree, then disagree. I'm all for it. A couple more topics as we start to wrap up. Let's first talk about next year. So 2021-22, we've touched on this a little bit. We feel like it'll be way more normal. I think we're going to see full seasons. I do. I think we're going to see people sitting in the gym. I don't think there may not be 100% of people in stands, but look at the average Division III game. You and I know there's social distancing anyway, right? The average Division III game isn't DeVos Fieldhouse at Hope with 3,500 people. It's just not. Tell me what you think next year looks like in terms of the lay of the land and teams and just what are you looking forward to next year?
I think, and I have given this some thought, I think that 75% of the teams in Division Three will play a full schedule. And I think the 25% that don't play a full schedule will play 18 to 22 games. We'll get close to that. I think that we will have a tournament. I think that teams will go on their regularly scheduled trips.
Sure.
I think we're going to get, you said it, normal is not the right word, but I think we're going to get close. I'm excited for next season because I think thanks to the NCAA, a lot of kids are getting a lot of extra eligibility. We're going to see some teams that maybe should have graduated a couple people, but did not. And maybe they played an extra season, or maybe they worked out for a whole year. I think we're going to be very surprised next year. Some teams that maybe you've never heard of, or you've kind of just always said, oh yeah, they'll be okay. You know, they're never going to be great. Those teams may be great. I think that there's going to be a lot of cool storylines coming out of everything that's gone on. I think obviously there's a lot of coaching changes that are going to be happening. Just this week alone, there've been a few Division III teams that have opened up, and I think that's going to play a factor into it as well. Will those teams that maybe were really good before, will they be able to recruit a class in this pandemic this summer? Who knows?
And taking a look at the landscape of the rosters, there's some fascinating things going on across several fronts. You have, in no particular order, you've got people leaving programs to be grad transfers in the UAA, and in particular, because that's a place where you can go be a grad transfer at those wonderful institutions. So we've seen about 3 or 4 already of those situations. I heard about a kid, and I tweeted it today, can't confirm it, that is heading from, is it Middlebury to Brandeis, I believe. There's been a few of these big name type transfers that are going to make an immediate impact. You have the kids that you mentioned that are staying another year. Maybe they played their senior year and they're going to use that waiver. You've also got, like I've heard at Swarthmore, you had some kids take gap years. They weren't even on campus this year. So they were not in school. They're going to come back and they still have that eligibility left. So really almost a confusing dynamic with rosters and trying to figure out who is. I can't imagine voting in the preseason poll next year because you don't even know at that point who's on the roster, you know?
Yeah, you just don't know. And especially with recruiting, when you have to add in recruiting to all that. You look at the transfers, you look at who stayed. But now more so than ever, you have this class of 2021, you're going to have teams that are much more selective about who they're bringing in. Or then you may have some teams that are going to bring in 9 new people because maybe they had a bunch of seniors and then those seniors said, you know what, I don't want to stay.
Right. And then the transfer portal,
I saw a stat recently that said that 25% of all points scored in Division I last year are now in the transfer portal.
That's crazy.
Which is insane. Now, are every single one of those kids going to go to another Division I? No. Are they going to go to Division IIs? Yes. Are they going to go to NAIs? Yes. Will there be some very good Division IIIs that scoop up a few of those? Absolutely. And then that can put a team that maybe we have no idea about. We could be talking right now, and there's some team out there in the middle of nowhere that just landed, some guy from some D1 who's a stud. And then next year he's going to average 25 points a game. We don't know that.
Yeah. And it's also a good point at this kind of the flip side of what you're saying too, is not every Division I transfer that transfers to Division III ends up being a superstar.
Correct.
Ends up being like, I'll just use one close to home. So Illinois Wesleyan's 6th man this year, Keandre Schumacher, is a Division I transfer from Winthrop. Keandre is a great player. He shot 55% from 3 this year. But Keandre didn't light up the CCIW. I could go down the list and pick out Division I transfers. So when people see on Twitter that there is a Division I transfer, they shouldn't automatically assume that team's like the favorite to win the national championship next year. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think you have a lot that are they get to Division One based on maybe hype. I think today, unfortunately, the basketball culture is a little overhyped. I think kids put some highlights out on Twitter, and then it shows them like dunking the ball, and then all of a sudden they got 3 offers. And like, okay, but can he shoot a jump shot and play defense? No, probably not. And then that kid ends up whatever it is at a JUCO or at a Division 3, and then they get like absolutely roasted by a Division 3 All-American, and there's like nothing. Then there's like it's like a eye-opening experience for them, and I don't think that's uncommon. I think that happens a lot. Now, I do think there are Division 1 transfers that go to Division 3 and are very good, but that doesn't mean that they're very good right away. They
Has to
have
do
to
with the kid, I
acclimate to the
think,
game.
and their attitude coming in. What I have seen up close is I've seen it work well and not well. I've seen kids come in from Division 1 and say, you know what, this is my new team. I have to earn their respect. I have to earn my way on the floor. I've seen some others come in thinking that they were going to be the CCIW most outstanding player, and it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
Right. Everybody's good.
Let's talk as we wrap up. Last topic here, I want to talk about that book you're writing. So we talked earlier that you have been working and put a lot of time already into a Division 3 basketball based book. Talk about that. What's the story, the general narrative of the book, if you can kind of just outline it to whatever degree you can, so people know what to look for?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I don't even know if I have a concrete outline yet, because I have spent so much time. It started with me just writing down my experience. I was like, this is interesting. I just want to write it down, and I wrote it down. And then I talked to some other guys, and I wrote down their experiences. And then I realized, I said, we all have such unique stories, and there's so much about Division 3 that, like, what people see about Division 3, they see the window on social media. They see the window. I want to kick the whole wall down. I want to show them everything. I want to show them. I want to show them every little thing about how, in a visiting locker room, you're in there and the lights don't work and the lockers don't open, and you have to change. You have to change like in a small area the size of like a dinner table with like 13 other guys, and your coach is yelling at you to go faster. Like I want to show, like, I think there's so many little stories that are just so cool, and I think people should hear them. I think there's a lot of guys, and I'm very thankful, and I consider myself very lucky that I have a relationship with certain guys in the business who have been around a long time and have some incredible stories to share. And I'm really excited to share those things. I want to, again, I think expose almost is a good word, because I want people to see it for what it really is. And I want them to see the hard work that these athletes and these coaches and these managers and these trainers put in 24 hours of the day. Because you see on Twitter, the D1 the 9 D1 managers on this program, they made they taped a court in a waiting room in a lobby. You have 9 managers. You have 7 assistant coaches. You have a Dobo. You have an assistant to the assistant. You have 4 athletic trainers. Okay, come down to Division 3. We have a head coach, an assistant. He may not even be full-time. You have an athletic trainer that splits their time between 17 other sports. You maybe have a manager. Maybe you have a grad assistant, and they're doing all of that work.
Right.
And I think the stories that come out of that are so cool. And that's not me bashing Division 1. That's what they have. That's what they do. And yet, I think what we do at our level is so much more impressive because of the fact that we are working with so much less. And these kids, they, like you said, they truly, truly, truly love Division 3 basketball. These coaches truly, truly love it. And because of that, I think someone needs to tell the story the way it's meant to be told. And I don't know if I'm the right guy. I don't know that. But I want people to hear it. And I think the best way to do it is just throw it on a bunch of pages and let it out.
Well, kudos for taking that on. I mean, it's one thing to, host a little podcast like I'm doing here and like you've done in the past. That takes a certain amount of time. It takes a certain amount of work, but to commit to writing a book, that's a whole nother adventure. And I can't wait till you get the time to, I know you've got a lot going on. You mentioned you're getting married and you have a lot going on in your life. You got, stuff with your team and your school and your staff, but we're all looking forward to that. And how about just the Twitter handle? When do you think that you'll get back after kind of being more active on that front, maybe getting back into the podcast game? What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I like to think August, because I get married in July, I get back from my honeymoon, and then I'll be able to kind of sit back
Oh, that's how you think
and,
this works. You just you
I'll
get
be
back
able
from the
to,
honeymoon and it's
I
over.
won't have to worry, I'm not gonna have to worry about as much. And, but I don't know. I don't know if it's realistic. Because I am deep in the book. I am more hyper focused on that right now than anything. It doesn't mean that you may see some. I will admit I have some recorded already podcasts that I never released.
It's like the Beatles. It's like finding Beatles music and like
Right.
releasing it is how,
I
right?
have a 2-hour recording of myself and a friend where all we do is just talk about Division 3 basketball. And he's a guy who literally knows nothing about Division 3 basketball. And it's so funny.
That's
And
great.
like, but I have stuff like that is there, that's available, that it's a lot of work putting these things together. I don't think people really understand. It's not just like, okay, you record it and you put it online. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. And I want to come out with more. I just don't know when the right time is going to be.
And a question, it's totally offshoot, but I think an important one for the people around Division 3, whether they're younger or, I'm going to be 50 in November, no matter what age you're going to be. Here's something that I think you're going to agree with is it's important that your loved one, your partner, your spouse, understands that this is who you are. And a lot of people who kind of have this bug that we have, whether it's D3 hoops or something else, some other passion, they find out they didn't really communicate all that well when they were dating and when they were engaged. And all of a sudden they get married and, their spouse said, what do you mean you're doing a podcast? What do you mean you're interviewing Damian Jablonski on a Saturday morning? So I'm very lucky that I did that the right way and that my wife knows exactly who I am. And she knows that every Wednesday and Saturday during the CCIW January, February, she knows where to find me. I'm going to be watching the Titans from 7 till 8:45. And she knows I'm doing this podcast thing because I like it and makes me happy. Is it fair to say that your fiance, who right now knows that you're in a mask and a duct tape hat to hide your identity, you're doing some Division 3 show right now?
She's
Like,
upstairs. She thinks I'm insane,
but she
but she
respects that
supports
you're
me.
insane,
Yeah.
correct?
Yes. And I think we've been together now 7 years. And in those 7 years, I've had 6 full seasons. I don't think she's missed a game, whether in person or online. We were long distance. When I was in the South region, she would watch all my games online, and I would go to my phone after the game, and there'd be like 40 texts from her, basically just like commentating the whole game through. So yeah, like she thinks it's a little insane, that D3 guy stuff and all that, and me being in the mask, but she understands it, and for that I'm truly thankful.
It's right. That's the premise. I think that's the main point. What you just said is she knows you're insane about all this Division 3 stuff, but she respects it and she understands it and she knows that that's who you are and she loves you for who you are. I'm telling you, I've seen this go south so many times. A lot of it's coaches that their wives don't understand what that life is truly like. The 365-day year, 24/7 thought around your roster and recruiting. And even if you're just a random Twitter podcaster guy like me, I mean, my wife's got to be all in on this. Otherwise, we have a whole bunch of issues, right? If she's like, what the hell are you doing? So I would just say to those listening, that is a big, big, big deal.
I will say, again, like I said, we've been together 7 years. Not until the pandemic, until this year, did we have a Valentine's Day together. Never once, because I always had a game. I always had a game on Valentine's Day. Right. Our first Valentine's Day, I was up like 4 hours away and I didn't get back until like 10:30 at night. And, I was just like, let's order some pizza. Like,
Right.
and
Right.
she still stuck with me through it all. And, and I think that that's important. And it's one of those I'm very, very, very thankful for. And she's a big fan now. She's a big fan.
Well, I hope that she might join us someday on the QCast. Maybe, when you're unmasked, maybe it's just like the Masked Singer and there's going to be a reveal show where you pull off the duct tape hat and the mask, and we get to know who you are for sure. I suspect some of the people, a small number, will watch this and be like, hey, I know who that dude is. I've seen, they're looking through this right now. They're trying to figure out if they can see a little of your face. I think you're going to be outed by maybe 4 or 5 people close to you.
I'm sure I will.
Probably.
I think every time I came out with a podcast, I had at least one person text me or DM me and say, "Ha, I know it's you." I will say the most impressive one was Ryan Scott. I may have already told this story, but on another podcast, but Ryan Scott was the most impressive one. He sent me like a whole dissertation about how he figured out it was me. I mean, I like the DM, I swear, was like, it was like 4 paragraphs long. And I was like so impressed. I'm like, wow, you got me. Like, good for you, man. Like, I was just so impressed. But it does happen now, every time I do something. And the people who knew instantly were like, guys I've worked with and my friends. They knew like that. But then since then it's trickled and not, now it's not as many people who don't know me know it's me, I guess you call it.
Well, just a final thought on my end, then I'll give you the last thoughts on this thing. Is it's good to finally have you on the show. We've been kind of talking about this for a month or so, just texting a little bit, finding the right time. Glad it finally worked. Selfishly, I'm glad it worked because if you recall, when you came onto the scene, people thought I created a burner called @that_D3guys, so I could apparently like say other stuff, and I would try to tell these people that's not me. You would put out a top 25. I'd be like, I would never put that team number 2. No, that can't be me. It's really good to have people like now, actually, like we've been on a podcast together. Now they can kind of see you a little bit, see that you're not my burner account.
We are not the same.
We're not the same. We love Division 3 and we have different perspectives on things. We agree that we love Division 3 basketball. I'm going to turn it over to you for the final words on QCast episode 12.
Well, first and foremost, Division 3 basketball is what brought you and I together. Our friendship started via Twitter. If it weren't for the fact that, this pandemic happened, I'm sure we probably would have met in person at the Final Four.
Safe to say.
And I think that it's really cool because I now have created these relationships with a lot of people that love Division 3 as much as I do. And I am so appreciative of the support. The t-shirts that we put out, a lot of that money went toward paying for the website fees that I had that I was struggling to afford, the podcast fees. And then actually a lot of that money ended up, it got donated to the JDRF, which I do a lot of fundraising for them. And then a lot of people have shown support by also sending me t-shirts. I have now probably 30 or 40 Division 3 t-shirts. My goal is to get all 400 some odd t-shirts. I'd like them all. I think that would be pretty cool to be the only person with that collection. But again, the support has been overwhelming, and I can't even tell you how thankful I am of it. And obviously you've been a great friend and supporter through all of this. And I'm so glad I got to come on here, and hopefully this is my foray back into the light of Division 3 broadcasting, as it were. And then I will say this. Last year, and I've argued with people about this all the time, last year's Sweet 16 into the Final Four, in my opinion, would have been the best couple round of games in the history of Division 3.
Would have been awesome.
I truly believe that. And I just can't wait for next year. Again, thank you so much for having me on. It was awesome, and go D3 Hoops.
Well, I appreciate that. And again, everyone watching this, you need to go to Twitter and follow @that D3guy. our friend here provides some awesome content. He's going to jump back into this as soon as he gets this a little more time. Great to finally have you on. Great to get your perspective, a different part of D3, different angles, and just, leaving it where you kind of started this, which is nice to have different voices covering Division 3. We need more of that. And kudos to you for jumping into the mix. And it's always good to chat, my friend. So that D3 guy, QCast episode number 12. Stay tuned, guys, for episode 13. Have that out here in the next week or so. And it's been awesome. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate you.